Hello everyone. We are kind of back. ऐसे कहना सही होगा. I think we have missed a few sessions in the middle. Actually, I got COVID, and some of the other members who they were not available for some personal reason. COVID इतना ज़्यादा फैल रहा है ना, so it became a little difficult for us to come together. But now we are back. It's our 20th session, thankfully. So today we thought we'll discuss about online and offline learning. See, we don't know when is COVID going, and I think remote learning is becoming more of a reality now. We all of us decided let's talk about how do we actually look at online and offline learning on the ground. So, welcome everyone. Let's begin with a very, I think, brief ideas. Gather brief ideas from everyone that what do they feel about what are the advantages of online learning and offline learning. Then we go to the disadvantages, and then we compare, and then we have the meshed discussion that we have.
Right. So I would like to start with the advantages of online learning, especially in the Indian context. Ours is a very, very structured way of delivering information and knowledge in schools, right? So a lot of flexibility is missing. We have, resources like library, etc., available, but then they're not always available to students, and so many other things are there. But with the help of online learning, you always have the resource at your disposal, whether it is an online lecture, video, assignment, comments by others, teachers, remarks, whatever it is, it's always available at your disposal. So you can access it anytime. So that is the kind of flexibility which definitely online provides. The other major advantage, according to me, is children can choose their speed of learning as well. In classroom settings, it's very difficult to do that because the syllabus is moving, the teachers are under pressure, and so many other things. Here, at least the child has a limited amount of flexibility available when it comes to speed of learning. So those are the advantages from my side. I think, Pallavi, what do you think are the advantages? Then we can come to the disadvantages.
So when I want to talk about advantages from the children's perspective, it is as sort of mentioned that of course you can control the level of learning, unlike physical classrooms where the teachers will come with a specific syllabus or a curriculum that needs to be, and then there are semesters ki first semester may have to do this, second semester so this is something. But I personally feel that there are more disadvantages because uh, with network, especially for metropolitan cities, it is very easy for internet and everything. But for people, those who are in interior parts of the country, it's kind of very difficult. Just give me a minute. There's some sound in the background.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about for our viewers, I'll tell them that we are trying to
Yeah.
define.
Okay, so I'm back. So for the children, those who are
Yeah,
staying in the interior parts of the country, it's little difficult, especially because most of them do not have this Wi-Fi thing. They use their phone internet, so there is this chance of getting disconnected again and again. So this is one problem. And also with children being in the house, they are not like when you go to school, you have a proper routine, you wear a uniform, there is a prayer, and there is a proper timetable. But when you are at home, I don't know, like I feel children are more or less in that frame of mind ki ghar pe hai to kitna concentration hoga. So these are a lot of issues that I feel when it comes to disadvantages. Jaslin is here. Jaslin will shed more light.
hey
Yeah,
Jasleen.
And
hi
advantages
everyone. I'm so
of
sorry.
So
online
we were just
classes.
discussing right now about how do we look at online and offline learning. I think for the viewers, I'll just give two words which are very in the common in the discourses: the synchronous and asynchronous learning. And for us to understand what we call as, because when we talk about online learning, they try to divide into these two things. One is synchronous. So what is synchronous is when you are doing online learning with the teacher live, like it goes on, at the same time. It is not like a pre-recorded video which you can look at your own pace. When it is a pre-recorded video, some materials which is there online, then it becomes a asynchronous learning. So that way, we when we think about online learning, we have to understand the side effects, or let's say the advantages of both synchronous and asynchronous learning. Yeah, Jasin, what do you think about online learning?
So basically, for online learning, so like coming from a background like where I've taught children from underprivileged, society. Like I was working in Jahangirpuri, and I've actually experienced their lifestyle, visiting their homes, and even traveling to other parts in my other experiences. I think online learning. When we talk about online learning, we need to see what section of society we're talking about. So, like if imagine my children, like the community that I have taught in, I am not sure how currently like they're managing their studies. Like I keep talking to them, like I hardly like I keep talking to the teachers and the students. Out of the class of 40, 50 students, I hear 10 to 15, students turning up. Like 35 students are not attending a classroom, which is uh like a grave situation. Like for the entire year, like students have missed out the classroom. But again, we do not have an alternative. But if I look at the future perspective, like the future of the country, it's moving to online. And by 2025, like the data says like 75% of students or the families will have access to smartphones. So if we move in that direction, we might just be able to provide the quality education that we talk about. Because having visited schools and these communities, there's one thing that the pain point is that we do not have quality teachers. That is for sure. Like it requires a massive upskilling of teachers at a large scale if we want to provide quality education to the students. So here online learning can really bridge the gap in providing quality education, and how we can upskill the teachers who are in the system, who can act as a role of mentors and facilitators to the students. So an alternative method can be created where the teachers in the school level, they're acting as facilitators and mentors, and actually classes are happening online where students are learning concepts through experiential learning, through different methods. So this is what I see as an advantage of online learning in future.
So you want to add?
I mean,
You only told the advantages.
yeah, so definitely, I think there are a bunch of advantages, more advantages also. It gives children the access and the freedom to explore the internet for more useful resources. And I don't recall where I read this, but there was a research. Actually, it's part of Soul as well. I've been talking about that quite a bit. Self-organized learning environment. So, if given a computer and internet connection, and you just give it to the children, they will ultimately find something useful. Most of them do not go into activities which are destructive, and that those are the findings of TED sponsored researchers in the UK and in India. So that freedom is definitely there now. Earlier it wasn't there. Now that behavior is changing. The disadvantages, as everyone said, I think till the time the standardization of devices, the standardization of internet connectivity, the standardization of software is there, we cannot expect that education in India is truly digital, or it's helping everyone.
And I just feel that it's not actually the lack of the content, curriculum, and everything. It's just the lack of infrastructure that is a challenge in terms of online education. When I speak to students, I think they are finding the videos interactive. They are finding tools online interactive, which are facilitating learning for them. The only challenge currently I see is infrastructure. Like they do not have devices. I think once the gap is bridged in longer run, I think if I imagine my students, a student who was taught by a government school teacher who's not up to the mark, and a student who's taught online, using different techniques, I think a student will always opt for the other option, because the student is having access to quality education through the platform.
So I'm just thinking that we are arguing that somewhere if we are able to give that standardization of networks of let's say internet and resources, then we will be able to provide quality education to children. So, and I'm just thinking that will we say that schools will one day become obsolete, that will we longer require schools if children are able to access the internet and smartphones, and they have the best quality teachers online that they are able to access, then will there be a time when schools will become obsolete?
I don't think so. Schools will become obsolete because the whole concept of a school is not just about learning a specific syllabus or learning the bookish knowledge or something that the teachers teach. I think school has a lot of other things also in terms of look at the other exposure, look at the other kinds of learning, the moral values or the kind of games the students are exposed to a lot of things. I feel nowadays children miss that. The children, those who were supposed to admit to schools in the last academic year, even the next academic year, they don't know their friends, they don't know how to interact with other people, they have not seen their teachers, their life is limited to a screen. I think that thing cannot fulfill the school, that cannot be fulfilled by online learning. That's what I feel.
What about this week?
Yeah, I mean that's very true what Pallavi said. In fact, in one of the episodes when Jasleen had invited the girls over from the Jahangirpuri school. Now we saw that how devastated they were that the schools are not open, because for them school is not only about education. It's about escaping their lives. It's about meeting friends. It's about growing and thinking. In an environment which they truly enjoy. So school, I think, will definitely play a part over there. Um, but as far as education is concerned, what Priyank was saying is more of a puritanical question as to so if education is imparted through devices, will schools become obsolete? I don't think they will become obsolete, because no matter which system of education you take, and one of the systems I really like is the Montessori method, wherein the teacher has very little to do with the education bit, but they still exist over there, because they are the ones who are supposed to understand the individuality of the student. They are the ones who are supposed to facilitate the interaction between students and the learning resources. They are the ones who are supposed to be as be safeguard of the children. So teachers will be necessary, and if teachers are necessary, then I think schools will also be necessary. That's what my point of view is. I don't think schools are going to go obsolete.
So again, agree with what Saurabh and Pallavi said. I think schools can never become obsolete because school is not only about academics. The current challenge that we were facing was providing quality education to the students, and I think that is one purpose where online education is bridging the gap. But when it comes to other aspects, social emotional development, other kind of development that students go to, I think school is very very necessary. It helps in their psychological development. They need people to talk to, they need people to grow with, they need people to challenge each other. And even when it comes to teachers also, in forms of mentor who can push them, who can grow them. Like having just giving them a device will not fix a purpose. They need anchors who can inspire them, push them further. And I think their school plays an important role, and that anchor can be their friends, their teachers, their principal, anybody. So their the institution as school plays an important role.
I think both Priyank and Pallavi went somewhere. Okay, Pallavi's back. Right.
I'm really sorry. Actually, my cough is still not gone, and it is getting bad. I don't
You should drink some water.
Yeah,
know.
I'm putting some
Okay.
water.
Continuing the discussion. So, see, when I said was schools becoming obsolete, I wanted to basically understand, because we are seeing learning in a very different way. And the primary objective, even if there is a lot of things, it's a lot of reasons attached to school being a useful resource, the primary objective of education, or let's say learning, or say let's say even achievement score, is still intact. And in that terms, somewhere we are going beyond school, and somewhere we are thinking of this whole rapid growing remote learning concept which is coming in. And my idea is that, let's say for us also, when we are thinking of online learning, and the people who are pro online learning, they'll say that, as Saurabh said, that you have your own pace, and there you can actually do a lot more with those resources when you can do go it over and over and again. And the people who are not for it, they'll be like, there is a mutual bond which can be only created in the classroom when the teachers comes in the class and talks to children, and there is there is some kind of relationship which is built, which can never be built online. It That relationship can only be face to face, and it is very important for the growth of the child. So what are your thoughts on this aspect? How do you look at when we talk about online learning? I think that's a different debate, that there's no internet and there are other issues related to resources and infra, and that we all understand and we can argue. But I basically want to go in depth of this whole idea, whether it is really a future which we should look at, where we are going for pro online learning, or will we still say that the bond can only be created in class.
Can I have more clarity on the question?
Okay, I can somebody, is there anyone who understood the question?
So what Priyank is basically asking is, what about the emotional attachment that the children have with the teacher? I mean, in the sense of learning. So it's also called emotional loading in the learning process. So that emotional loading actually helps in learning more, because you're emotionally connected with the teacher, and what the teacher is saying, or whatever the tools the teacher is using, your learning improves a lot. Whereas through a screen, I mean, I can see you guys, but then the connection is still artificial. It's still not the same. We still cannot receive each other's vibrations, because that's what animals do. They receive each other's wavelengths and frequencies. So that emotional loading, the lack of it, because of the lack of physical interaction, how challenging is that? That is on the lines of what Priyank had asked.
So I will just share an example. I was just before shifting, I was in a friend's house who has a kid, and the teacher was teaching Hindi Varnamala to the kids, and then uh, there were poems, like two line poems. So I saw that when the teacher was saying and the kid was telling it, and the kid, because the kid was not able to do it, the kid actually muted the mic. So I asked the kid, like, she was my friend's daughter. I was like, why did you mute the mic? Then she was like, I don't know what to say. So I was just thinking, if it was in a physical class, would it be possible? So just imagine like how the learning has changed. So that actually made me question that actually this online learning, how, because for us who have become like a little bit big and who are professionals, it's fine, but for kids from the childhood they're adapting to this. So I don't know how much of actual they will be able to learn what the teacher is teaching. So that's a big question.
And just to add, see, as I said, so the kind of bond which is built in a face-to-face classroom, can it happen on online learning? The same, and how important is that bond, if it can or cannot, for the whole learning experience of the child.
So I would just like to, add to what, or actually answer what Pallavi's question was related to what Priyank asked. So the answer for, online learning is that the child has to be more self-motivated. Like our education systems, or I'd say Asian education system, they are so hierarchical, and there is this guru shishya relationship, which has the tradition continues that the teacher will tell you what to do. So you just wait and listen, right? That thing has changed drastically because the children were kind of conditioned in that way, that you have to wait for the teacher to say something. And because of the online learning thing, now the teacher is incoherent because you can't listen to her or understand what she's saying, or understand the topic itself. So there's a lot of self motivation that is needed from the child's part to be involved in the online learning process. And it's a big ask. It's a sudden ask. You never trained the children for it, you never conditioned them, so it's a big ask. So yeah, that was my 2 bits to Pallavi's observation.
um, so there's no actually like particular answer if that emotional bond can be created or not, because also depends upon in what way the interaction is happening, how the facilitator is making sure relationship is being built, what is the size of the classroom, how many kids are regular. So a lot of aspects. I'll just give you an example. Like all five of us as adults, I think we met on internet. I think in the discourse of like 2-3 months we have developed that kind of friendships and bond over meeting, because the circumstances were different, the groups were small. It's not that it is not possible. It lot depends upon how the person is anchoring, facilitating, what kind of discussions the students are happening, how frequent they are meeting, what is the setup. So I think all these things are important as well.
So I mean, people do adapt. They do adapt. They do change with the help of technology and everything. And humans generally have a tendency of being suspicious of new technology. You can read case studies where people, when television came into being, and people like, oh, now everyone's minds are going to go crazy. Everyone is going to become an addict. They're going to become couch potatoes. But only a very small percentage of people who had those tendencies became actually couch potatoes. The rest of the population was just fine. They adapted, they understood, they realized how much to use and how much not to use, right? And TV became a part of our lives, very normal part of our lives. Similarly, I think online learning will become a part of our lives. The only challenge over here is there are multiple stakeholders, and once they start adapting, all the stakeholders, I think, as Jasleen pointed out, there is definitely a great possibility of forming emotional bonds online as well.
I think there's also one statement by Raji. She's saying that schools are important in the social development of children. The brain development happens up to 6 years of age. Social skill development happen even after this. So schools should exist. To our earlier discussion, and she has asked a couple of questions. So, do you think that younger children need more offline learning compared to elder children because they're unable to sit for a long time and concentrate? Also, because they need more social interaction. So, can we think of in terms of age, which age group requires more offline, which can do more online, like that?
So yeah, um, just today, I mean, I reposted one of the podcasts that I had recorded, I think 3 months ago. And in that podcast, I had invited two guests from Japan. They both run a preschool over there for the children between the ages of 2 to 6. And it's based on the Montessori method of learning. Now, one of the questions that I asked him was pretty clear. I said, so I've experienced what you do at AKG, that is the name of the preschool. um, there are no screens, there are no iPads, there are no computers, no phones allowed. And you tease them about gardening and doing this, doing that, playing around, whatever, um, because you have a strict no screen policy and you think that is good for the children. Fine. But the moment they step out of the school, the moment they sit in the car, of the parents, the car has a big screen, touch screen. Then the moment they reach home, there's an LED TV, there is an iPad on the kitchen top. I mean, how are you going to let the child escape from that particular area, right? So the screens are going to be there, and it can be tough for the child, to just say, okay, in that 2 hours that I spend at AKG, I'm not going to use the screen, but rest of the time I'm just open to using the screen. So clearly you're not really taking them away from the usage of screen. How does it impact the growth of the children then? And what they said was pretty interesting. They said that ultimately It is about habit formation. And if we are able to make the children more interested in outdoor activities, in activities related to cooking, related to gardening, related to creating a pond or something like that. And if they are more interested in that, if they get more interested in that, they will automatically move away from screens. They will use screens only for when they need to use a screen. Otherwise, they will not really be habituated or completely dependent on screens. So I think it's more about habit formation. Screens and technology are just another tool.
Adding to that, I think there's one point just came to my mind, that it also depends on what kind of discussion the peer group has. If your peer groups discusses a serial every day or every second day, that what happened last night and that serial, or let's say a game, or let's say anything, it'll revolve around that. If your peer group discusses about certain aspects of, let's say, what we're just discussing, I did some new plantation or whatever, a new activity, a new sport, or exercise or anything, so this subtle thing actually plays a very important role in determining in which way the child mind is getting steered, because they get affected really in the kind of peer group they have. They want to be one who understand the discussion more in that per se. Yeah. So coming back to Raj's question, I think we have not yet answered completely her question, that can we divide the whole online experience based on age group, that this age group requires more online, this age group requires less offline or online, whatever.
So I just have a point here to make. Yeah, definitely we've spoken about online education makes sense for students in higher education, students in secondary or middle school. But we when it comes to children in primary schools, we don't know yet what is there because the potential is untapped, like whether online education works for them or not. So there are like organization and tech startups that have come up that are primarily just focusing on this age group and how we can integrate technology with them. So the idea for those organization is not just use technology as a tool, but how systematically integrate it in their everyday learning in a blended model. So again, I just want to say that we don't know whether the technology works for them or not until and unless we've tried. So there are people who are setting up and testing whether it works out for them, it doesn't work for them, what should be the screen time when it comes to online education for them. But yeah, definitely there's a point that we need to have children get into more offline based learning, as Saurabh mentioned, more activity based learning, that definitely push their development. But at the same time, I would just like to
So
make the point that yeah.
so basically you're trying to say it is not really age dependent, right?
Yes, for yeah, it is not. So, yeah, like certainly it is not age dependent, because for primary, children's younger kids, we haven't really tried and tested out the best model what works out for them. Definitely, like maybe something works that we need to have less screen time, 20 minutes per activity on screen, or game based learning for them. So we really don't know what works out for them yet.
So, I mean, I would like to add over there a little bit. I have a slightly different view here. Um, so all of us know, all of us have seen this, that parents, what they do is, parents of young children, what they're in the habit of doing nowadays is they would just play, one of those kids videos or cartoon videos on YouTube and just keep the phone on, and the kid will get distracted. I mean, to me, it just looks like the kid is getting addicted to, if I'm allowed to say a hyperbole here. But that is what it seems to me. The content is made in such a way that it is more and more addictive. that it completely distracts a child. And that leads to certain behavior patterns which you can't change later on. The child automatically prefers sitting on the bed and watching the screen rather than actually engaging in some other physical activity, because you've conditioned that child right from the, I don't know, 1 year onwards or something of age. And that is really, really detrimental. And if the content is being created in that direction, then definitely we need to um, check that a lot. So YouTube Kids has a separate app now. You have to subscribe. There are so many things, but the content is really detrimental. At the same time, I agree with Jasleen that this is a completely untapped area so far. People have not experimented yet. People have not really understood how to use AR to convey a lot of things, to increase the imaginative powers rather than diffusing them. Because right now what we do is, whenever we give content to somebody, the imagination kind of lessens, because you already see somebody else's imagination going on, so you have a reference point in your brain. The imagination, the creativity, according to me at least, it decreases a bit. So when it comes to the children and the age groups, like should online learning be there or not, I think it all depends on the content and the frequency with which the content is shown to the kids. The quality of content will vary according to age, and we need to be very, very sure of the fact that this kind of content, because colors and patterns and graphics, they do have an impact on your brain and your sensing. They are not detrimental to your growth, of the different senses in your brain. So that is something which we deeply need to think about.
One thing that I have observed is that when we are doing online classes, like which happens with me also, I can't just say it happens with the kids, it's very common. It's like you are always bound to get what you call, your concentration is bound to get disturbed. Maybe with the noise behind you, across you, or it's just that start to look at other things, or you start to check other things. So this is very frequent with us, like who are adults. So I can absolutely understand the condition of kids. So it's definitely difficult, but then I think we have already crossed a long phase, 7 8 months. So we will shortly we'll try to adapt to this new normal thing.
So, Saurav is, I think what I've understood is you are also saying that it is not age dependent, right?
Yeah,
The
not really. The content is not the online learning. Online learning should be there. It will be there. You
It
can't
will be
escape it.
there. So yeah, you see, like organization like Uday have just started, and they're like changing the way how education looks like for primary children. They're bringing in new technologies. They are innovating the content just to make it more interactive and more consumable for the children. So we don't know yet like whether it works out or not until and unless we've tried and tested on the kids. It might
and
just work
Pallavi,
out. Hmm.
Pallavi, what do you say? It is age dependent or not?
I can say from my friends, half of my friends kids experience, yes, like I kind of little bit agree with you that
I can't hear you. Like I can't hear you.
am I audible?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So my some of my most of my friends says that as adults we have this responsibility ki humko kaam karna hai, we have to go to classes. So we kind of push ourselves and motivate ourselves, which actually sort of also said. But when it comes to kids, school, when they are in school, they have these friends, they have a teacher who keeps on looking at them and telling them, and if their mind is deviated, the teacher tries to take the effort to bring them into that phase of mind and that classroom feel. But when it comes to online, because the teacher is not able to see, and most of the time nowadays kids have started not just muting it, they have also started like they have, most of the times they don't put on their video. So uske baad bacche kya kar rahe hain, like just before the session started, I was talking to someone, the person was telling the kids class was going on and the kid was playing football or basketball on the house. So you see, so these are the, it depends, again it depends, but mostly I think for very small kids, this online thing, it will take some time for them to adapt themselves.
I think that is again what Saurav and Jasleen were talking about, quality of content, that how interactive it is and how it can be more engaging for the kids, and it will be a totally different content, and we all can agree on that. One thing just is just striking me that maybe it the online learning thing is not age dependent, but the screen time is, right? That we definitely can say that a particular age group children should not have a certain amount of screen time. So I think with regards to screen time, it will still be a age thing, that that this great age group should not have beyond this point of screen time. That, or is there a kind of a solution for that as well?
So, screen time is a relatively new thing, to be very honest, because there have been no direct studies related to age groups and screen time and its bad effects. Obviously, we've heard those extreme cases when there were children who continuously sat and played video games for 15 hours straight, and then had a lot of bad effects to them. All those cases, extreme cases, will always be there, but till the time there is an actual study on how screen time affects the children. But then again, screen time also depends on the screen, right? And the kind of content being projected on the screen. So that means the standardization of the hardware and the software both are needed for such a study as well. So if you're looking at something with a screen which is refreshing only at 60 hertz compared to a screen which is refreshing at 120 hertz, then the amount of blue light which is emitted, are you using a screen guard or not? So many different aspects are there. I think we need to have a proper academic study on this before we can even comment on it.
Anyone else?
I think Saurabh has covered like what I wanted to articulate. So yeah, I agree with him.
Okay, I think that is a fair point, that there is a lack of studies, and yeah, we still may feel that that certain group of children may not have access to such a screen time. But right now, when we are, even there's lack of opportunities as such, and and online learning is coming big way. I think we also have to think in terms of how this can be more efficient for children of every age group. Let's go to the next question, which again Raji has asked, that now let's think in terms of subjects. So what she's saying, that do you think that subjects could be divided between online and offline when you move towards hybrid learning, and or is it good to change subjects regularly between online and offline modes? So is it like certain subjects are better when taught in offline mode or better when taught in online, and does it work like that?
Should I?
Yeah.
I don't think we can ever do that anymore. Earlier there used to be a games period or physical education, and there was no screen or technology used over there. But now athletes are trained using AR and VR, with the wires coming out of their heads and everything. Then musical instruments. Most of the music production done in the world today is on computers. It's not even on instruments anymore. If you have a laptop, you can become Honey Singh, because that's what Honey Singh did. He had a laptop and he became Honey Singh. So it's very difficult to detach any subject, because there is always going to be an aspect which the textbook shows you, and the same thing can be projected and created using technology in a much better, wonderful, interactive way, right? So I don't think that it's possible anymore to have subjects without technology. Maybe if we start including subjects such as empathy, such as a tolerance for other people, and proper dedicated subjects towards diversity and humans and everything, probably then we don't need technology in those conversations. But apart from that, I don't see subjects getting differentiated based on technology.
Some children shared with me that they would prefer that maths, physics, chemistry is taught physically, And when it comes to literature, history, geography, it can be taught online because there is not a lot of application based things. So that's what some of the students shared. So I personally think it doesn't make any difference to me.
When you do lab experiments, you can do a AI VR kind of a thing and take some chemical and put it in the chemical, see what happens, or you
Yeah,
need to.
like,
Mhm.
yeah, definitely. Like every problem has a solution. If you want to do experiments, that is possible online also these days. Like,
And they are much
uh,
safer.
and they're much safer, and children gets hands on. Like, you tell us a problem, there will be a solution when it comes to tech. Obviously, it is not at a large scale, but the solution does exist. So, as sort of suggests that we cannot, even for lessons like empathy and social emotional learning, when I was at Teach for India, I was taught see like online. Social emotional learning used to happen online. Mindful lessons these days happen online through apps and through learning circles online. So now we can't like detach technology from any subject. It's just so ingrained. It just got so much integrated at, you know, technology and offline learning just go hand in hand.
I think, of course, it has barged in our lives like that. But
Yes.
again, when we compare, handling a chemical in a AI VR kind of setting and in real life, there's a lot of difference, right? It will make a huge difference for a child to actually handle a chemical or do an experiment on a cockroach than a virtual cockroach, which you do the dissection and everything. So
Yeah, I mean,
there is.
I actually wanted to add a point over here. And before I do that, I mean, just a comment on the chemical reactions online. People have been doing such experiments, grown-ups, governments, since the late 70s, I think, because most of the nuclear bomb tests nowadays are simulated. So it's just a simulation on the computer, and it tells you whether the bomb will work or not, or how much the impact it had. So simulations will always help us, no doubt. But I think we're missing a very important aspect over here, that the technology has barged into our lives, and the existing school systems, which were generally one to many kind of a function with the teacher and the children, and one to many, that one person is giving the same information and the same process to everybody. Technology completely changes that on its head, because technology today is all about customization and individualization, right? So if you have a phone or a computer, it is completely customized according to your preferences, choices, and the way you like to do things. And that is something which I don't see in schools. So, having worked with some of the biggest companies which supply smart classes to the schools in our country, still, it's a smart class. It's supposed to be a smart class, but it is not at all smart. Why? Because it is just a blackboard with a projection screen at the end of the day. It is not helping each of the 40 students individually. It is just, again, one to many. Whereas I think what we need to do is we need to think about technology in creating that personalized, customized learning experience, so that every child using technology can get to the same kind of, maybe the same kind of level, maybe the same kind of proficiency, maybe the same or maybe the level that is best suited for them. And that is something where I don't see a lot of things happening right now.
So basically, you're saying that it is only through technology we can have a more individualized learning experience for every child.
So obviously it is possible, and it is happening in India also without technology, and that is called tuitions. Because in the school you have 40 to 60 students per class, and in tuitions you have probably 1 to 10 people in every class, which is generally what the Montessori method also kind of suggests, that maximum students should be 15 around in a classroom, so that the teacher is able to give individual attention. And that only happens in our country, at least in the tuition sector, and only for academics, by the way, not for any other aspect of education.
I think I these days tuitions are also just getting converted into another like
Yeah,
second
yeah.
classrooms with
So if
content.
you get into that, so they just become second classroom, and there is no difference. The only way you can do it is, the only way a tutor who wants to do it is probably use technology to create an individualized, customized experience for the student, see where they lag, and then completely do an intervention to focus on that particular area, improve it, and then move on.
Anybody else has anything to say?
No, we can move on to the next.
I think what we are also discussing, there is a certain concept which is a new concept which has come in the field of education, is flipped classroom. So what do we mean by flipped classroom? That now that we have technology, we don't have to go the traditional way of one teacher standing in the front and giving a lecture, and 50 students listening to him or her. The idea is to completely flip it. How? Is that the content or the lecture or whatever, the curriculum will be delivered to the student beforehand. So student will go through the lecture, will go through the exercise content and everything before even coming to the classroom. So the classroom is flipped. You don't do. So earlier, what was that? The teacher teaches, and there will be homework which will be given. You go at home and do the homework out of using the teaching which has teacher has taught. Now the idea is the teacher will give you the teaching first, so you do it at the home. You listen to the lecture, you do the exercises, what which the teacher used to do beforehand in the classroom. So do it at home, then you come to the classroom and you get in depth of the concept, that you go deeper. There is a more discussion and deeper level discussion which happens with the teacher, not the usual teaching. The teacher will ask you questions, that what have you understood and how does this concept pertain to you, where do you use it and everything. And it's a more deeper kind of a learning which is being argued. So what do people think about it?
So again, I mean, there are pros and cons to flip classroom as well. I think it's a very big cultural question also, because if you just implement flip classroom in India, let's say right now, then what happens is it just adds on to the pressure of the parents, because the student is just going to say, okay, so tomorrow I am supposed to be prepared with this chapter, and the teacher is going to have a discussion on it, and we're going to discuss questions on it. How do I do it? And then the parent has to become the teacher and teach the entire thing, because that's where I completely see this going. Even during lockdown, what happened was most of the parents actually became teachers to make sure that the children are sitting in front of the computer, to make sure that they're not doing anything else on the computer. And so when they take on the roles of teachers, again the child misses out, because the entire novelty of flipped classroom is missed in that particular scenario. And in a society like ours in Asia, or let's say the Middle East, where one of the parents is primarily the homemaker, and the other parent is the breadwinner, the homemaker inevitably will be pushed into this. And that is where I think, till the time we have that cultural change where the students are given that flexibility to learn on their own and taught how to learn on their own, I think flipped classroom, at least in this context, might be a little redundant, I would say.
So I have a slightly different view on flipped classroom. So in my experience, not in like school. So while I was
Jasmine, your
teaching
voice
in a
is
learn
breaking.
center in Jahangirpuri, few students. Hello, is it audible? Hello.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So while I was teaching in a learning center in Jahangir, with few students who had access to devices, and where I could experiment flip classroom, I think it worked wonderfully in terms of the implementation. Students would come prepare with the notes, and in the classroom, like engaging, set of questionnaires put in front of them. I could challenge students. Students could work in groups and solve each other's doubt. I think more or less it was time saving classroom and an in-depth conversation where children would move out of the classroom with clarity, conceptual learning, and peer-to-peer understanding. So these were the few things that came alive when flipped learning was implemented in the classrooms. That, in my experience, how I experienced flipped learning. It actually gives more independence and ownership to the students and saves a lot of time in the classroom to do other things which teachers are not able to do so.
So, but then did you, in that experience, Jasleen, I mean, I'm just curious here. Were you able to also understand how the children learned at their home?
So yeah, definitely. Like when students, it's not that students have to have a clear understanding of what they have learned. You give them a 30 minutes content, they go through the content, make notes. They have a partial understanding of what the content is all about. Like even 50-60% understanding of the content was there. And when they used to come into classroom, at least they had questions to ask. And when the questions used to start, there would be discussions in the classroom where students who have understood the concept would give the inputs. Teacher would act as a facilitator, push students and challenge student. It would change the aura of the classroom entirely differently. So in that sense, students would go away with more understanding of the concept. Like once they've studied in the class at home, and in the second round they've discussed it with the peers and the teachers, and built a more deeper understanding of the
So,
concepts.
Justin, how did you make sure that every student goes through that content? Like, if there are one or a few students who don't do the initial reading which has to be done, how did you deal with that?
So definitely there will be cases where you will not see 100% kids turning up. It happens with homework as well. And even if in a classroom also, you will always find 10 students who are not listening at all. That will always be the case. So you just need to identify those students and pair up with children who've done the reading, who could help them understand, and you could just spend time with them individually, as a teacher, as a facilitator. It's just that how you map them in groups, how you pair them with buddies, few techniques in the classroom just to make sure that they are also learning. Or you can make it as an incentive. You could just do it in the form of activities. Students who will do learning at home, they will get this and any kind of incentive that you can do as a teacher. You just need to come up with innovative and creative ways just to make sure that students are doing it at home.
Pallavi?
I don't know. I feel it depends because of course I do not have that much of experience of working with kids. So I can say from the experiences that I've heard and the kind of trainings I have taken, I think it's it can't be specified according to me. I can't specify, like as I said, that I still feel I need to do more research to understand it.
Okay. So basically, the I think the consensus is that it's a great tool, uh, flipped classroom. But again, the problem is the on ground reality and how do we use it. That
What are your views?
I would again say, like, I concur with this thing that it's a very ambitious and idea of a flipped classroom, that because if a child is very self motivated, half the problem is anyway solved, as Saurav has also touched the point of self motivation. The core problem lies there. If a child is motivated, self motivated, you don't actually need a class. The child will be able to do a lot of things himself or herself. The problem is, how do you do that? How do you achieve that self motivation for the child? And next, again, not every child has the environment, or whatever you call it, at home for the flipped classroom to work, as they have it and that's different issue. But again, and that is a reality for most of our households in our country. So I would say, again, it's a very good idea, but I don't know if there is a framework which talks about self motivation per se, because if child is self motivated for any class for that matter, because in our school, if you remember, there were some children who used to study the subject or the chapter beforehand, and then they
Before
used to
they
come.
come to the class, yeah.
They were they were toppers, and some students who used to do that because they felt that if they do the thing early, they will be able to go more in depth of the because they had the resource, or they had the whatever the vision or the motivation. So that way. Raji, I think, has something to say. Don't you think that by encouraging students to ask questions and evaluate the classes, uh, they would develop more self-confidence and initiation, which are lacking in many Indian students?
Can you come up again?
Don't you think that by encouraging students to ask questions
Mm.
and evaluate the classes, they would develop more self-confidence and initiation, which are lacking in many Indian students? So basically, she's saying that, by encouraging students to asking questions and do evaluation of the class which they are attending and everything, that will help them develop more self-confidence and initiation, which is actually lacking in many uh, Indian students.
And so that's what the thing is, right? I mean, there needs to be an entire cultural shift, because our parents don't like to be questioned by their children. Our teachers don't like to be questioned by their children, by the students. The senior students don't like to be questioned by junior students. So that culture, till the time it remains, technology can only take forward what is already existing. It will not transform. The transformation actually is supposed to be cultural, and technology is just going to be a tool, whether it is for this kind of learning or that kind of learning. So that's what it is, I think.
Also, I feel that I agree that students should be encouraged to ask questions, but there is an inherent fear in students' mind, because the students feel if they ask question and if they don't ask the right question, then they will be mocked at, which generally happens. Like, for example, students, those who are not good at maths, or students those who are not they do not know specific grammar. I saw it in my class. They had so many queries, but they had this fear that if they ask this question, the whole class will laugh at them. So this thing is also there, that a little bit of discrimination or a fear, which kind of makes them get scared, thinking about the fact that if I ask question, maybe my class will judge me, or maybe the teacher will tell me, okay, you don't know this. So this also has to be addressed, I feel.
So again, like in this point, what Saurabh said, that it's a great practice in the classroom to give more ownership to the students, to let them evaluate their peers in the classroom culture. But it requires a cultural shift, and how the trainings of the teacher happens. So rather than being a teacher to a student, how you can turn as a facilitator, mentor in the classroom. I think that will make sure that we have such kind of culture in the classroom. And if once we have given that ownership from the teacher to the students, I think a lot of problems that can be solved. Like in the problem that Pallavi mentioned, that they will be mocked at. Again, if that cultural shift is happening and that space is created, I think these activities that have, like these instances like bullying, I think these will also start reducing if that cultural shift is happening in the classroom. So for that, I think the entire training process, how we imagine classrooms, how we imagine schools as a system needs to change. And yeah, that's what I want to say.
There's another comment. Raji is asking about the involvement of parents. So I think we have just last 1 minute. I'll just say that, of course, involvement of parents will play a role, and for the connection which child build with the parents, as well as the kind of response he or she gives to the learning experience. I just want to ask a last question, where I just want you people to share some very quick points for all educators or students or anyone who wants to employ online learning, online tools, and these technology tools for teaching students. That what are some quick points they should consider for teaching or learning through tech?
The first point will be, I mean, you need to teach the students how to, behave. So there's an entire online learning etiquette, which I think is extremely important, and the children don't know that. So definitely that. So you create certain ways and structures which, so that it is beneficial for everyone. I think that is the first point everyone needs to take care in their mind.
So I just want to say that there are a lot of new platforms that are coming, that takes care of the behavior aspect as well. So Zoom is, I think, not the ideal platform to conduct online classes, because here students have the liberty to quit, drop down to, mute. Trying alternative technologies where, more collaboration can happen. I think those other technologies that can be explored. And when it comes to school, I think blended or flipped learning are the great ways in which online learning can be integrated. So teachers must explore that aspect, in the classrooms when they enter in schools after this pandemic.
Well, Avi, anything to add? All right.
No,
I'll just
I am fine with it.
I'll just add one point that I think for all teachers and educators, I think it is time that they also take a role of a learning. That children are very, very, very tech savvy somehow, and they will have a lot to teach the teachers in terms of technology. So if they collaborate with students in terms of using these tools, in terms of how actually the classroom should happen, whether you use a Google Classroom or whether you use a Google Meet or Zoom or whatever, in terms of going through various websites for tools to teach particular subjects and finding out resources for children. So there has to be a collaboration on a deeper level between the teacher and the students, where they both figure out the best ways for the teaching learning to happen. I think we are anyway across the time. So let's call it a day. Thank you, everyone. Thank you again who was there. Thank you.
Thank you.